In southern France, former Special Ops Frank Martin gets a notification and heads out in his BMW and drives through the city, coming to a stop in front of a bank. At that moment, 4 bank robbers rushed out with their loot and piled into the car. Frank, however, refuses to move as the men have brought an extra man, which violates one of his rules and would increase their risk of getting caught. Frank insists on driving only 3 men, and out of frustration the leader kills one of his men who is pushed out of the car. Frank then takes off, just as the cop cars start closing in, and leads them on a high-speed chase. A private police car then joins in on the chase and seems to be closing in on Frank, but he manages to lose the man through the back streets. They get blocked in on a bridge when a garbage truck stops in the road, but with quick thinking, Frank drives the car over the edge, landing on a car tow truck. He uses the robber's gun to shoot the cars loose, causing a crash, then gets back on the road at top speed. He plans to lose the cops before getting to the drop point, so he heads towards the train lines and timing a train. He is able to lose the cars easily. Frank arrives at the drop spot where the robbers offer him more cash to drive them to another location, but Frank refuses, as it would break rule number 1, never change the deal. The robbers then jump into another waiting car and speed off. Frank changes his license plate, then heads to his villa home overlooking the sea. After cleaning the car thoroughly, he sees on the news where the 4 robbers were captured after they crashed. Frank is then visited by Inspector Turconi, who questions him about the black BMW seen driving away from the scene, noting the skillful driving and wondering if Frank visited the city lately. Frank evades his questions and, lacking any proof, the inspector leaves. Frank then gets called to another job where he meets with some gangsters, who hire him to deliver a package of £110. Frank reminds the men of his rules and accepts his payment. The next day, Frank waits as men pull up and load the package into his trunk. He takes off driving but soon realizes that he has a flat tire. He steps out and goes to the trunk to get his tools, when he sees the package moving. He ignores it and gets the tire fixed and gets back on the road. After stopping to get some snacks, Frank gets back on the road, but his curiosity gets the best of him and he pulls over and opens the package, only to see an Asian girl pop out. Concerned, Frank cuts the tape covering her mouth, offers her a drink, then stuffs her back inside. He tries to continue on, but her constant banging in the truck makes him pull over again. She tells him that she wants to pee, so Frank takes her out and ties a rope around her neck to secure her, then gives her 1 minute to go do her business in the bushes. He reminds himself that he is breaking his own rules and begins to pull the rope back in, only to realize that it has been cut and the girl is gone. She is running through the woods, determined to get away, but Frank easily tracks her down and captures her. He puts her on his shoulders and returns to his car only to see 2 cops there. They try to capture him, but Frank easily knocks the 2 cops out. He finally gets to his destination where he is met by Darren Betancourt, an American gangster. Frank hands over the package, but before leaving, Darren requests that he deliver a suitcase, to which Frank accepts. Frank stops to get drinks, and as he is heading back to his car, it suddenly explodes, throwing Frank back. Out for vengeance, Frank bursts into Darren's villa where he injures and kills a few men. He goes looking for Darren and is forced to battle axe-wielding men, but Frank is able to defeat them. After shooting up the house, Frank heads to Darren's garage where he steals an S-Class Benz and makes his getaway. After a while on the road, Frank is shocked to realize that the girl is in the back of the car. He angrily lets her off on the side of the road and decides to leave her there, but changes his mind and returns for her. He takes her back to his house, where he learns that her name is Lai. He cuts her free and offers her noodles, before leaving her there and heading to bed. She begins to snoop around and stumbles upon Frank's collection of army awards and photos, before deciding to stay and get some sleep. The next day, Darren goes to the hospital to visit one of his men that survived the attack. He is shocked to hear that Frank is still alive, and to stop his man from talking to the police, he suffocates him. Frank wakes up to find Lai still there, arranging flowers and having made them breakfast. She heads to the door to get his milk, where she meets Inspector Turconi and introduces herself as Frank's new cook. He comes inside to speak with Frank and shows him his burnt license plate, asking about his car. Frank claims that the car was stolen and Lai supports his story, saying that she was the one that brought him home. The inspector is suspicious and asks to see her car, and Frank takes him to show him the S-Class Benz in the garage. Again with no evidence, Turconi decides to leave them be. After, Frank is quite annoyed at all the trouble Lai has caused when he realizes that everything is unusually quiet. Suddenly, a rocket is fired at the house, causing a massive explosion. Men surrounding the house then open fire with automatic weapons at the house, forcing the 2 to run for cover. Just as the men fire another missile, Frank and Lai are forced to hide in an underwater passage, escaping the large explosion that destroys the entire house. Underwater, Frank has hidden scuba gear and he swims with Lai through the dark waters until they come to Frank's safe house. They head inside and begin changing off their wet clothes, and Lai decides to make up for his troubles by handing over the cheeks. Later, Frank and Lai are questioned by Turconi about his house and the men who attacked him, but Frank denies knowing anything about the attack. The inspector is called away, so Lai uses the opportunity to access his computer and print off information on Darren. Once they leave, she wants to go after Darren, but Frank wants to use this opportunity to start over his life and tells her to do the same. Lai, in tears, then reveals that Darren has 400 Chinese people trapped in shipping containers, including her family. She begs him to help her save her family and Frank feels pity for her and agrees. They ambush Darren at his office, holding him at gunpoint and demanding to know why he tried to kill Frank. Darren reveals that he knows Frank opened the package and broke his own rules and needed to get rid of him. Lai is looking for the shipment number, when Darren reveals that Lai's father, Mr. Kwai, is also a smuggler and his partner. Mr. Kwai then enters the room and she turns the gun on him, demanding him to stop what he is doing. He instead holds Frank at gunpoint demanding that she drop her weapon. They learn that the police are on their way up, so Darren knocks out Frank just as Inspector Turconi enters the room. Darren accuses Frank of kidnapping Lai and attacking them, so Turconi has no choice but to have Frank thrown in jail. Frank reveals to Turconi Darren's plan to smuggle people in containers, and Turconi believes him, but he has his hands tied as there are rules for him to follow. Inspector Turconi knows that Darren is dirty, and he knows Frank's history in the army. Knowing that he can get the case solved faster, he agrees to help Frank escape under guise of a breakout and they drive to the docks. Turconi offers Frank his gun until he sees that his boat is already stocked with weapons. They say goodbye and Frank heads over to the shipping yard to begin his war. Using a stethoscope, he begins to check each container for the smuggled people. Meanwhile, Darren sends off his shipment of people and Kwai has his guards take Lai, ready to leave. Frank is spotted and is forced to give away his presence. Darren turns up and the two begin to fight, but Darren is able to overpower him and knock him down before setting his guards on him. Frank is forced to battle the men, but wastes no time in knocking them down with powerful blows. After the fight, he sees Darren and his convoy of trucks setting out and manages to jump onto one of the passing trucks. The driver however spots him and manages to shake Frank off, causing him to land on a passing bus below. Once the bus stops, Darren's goons turn up and begin attacking Frank, but the men are endless and corner him inside a bus. Frank manages to defeat the men with some sweet moves, but is confronted by a large man outside that knows how to fight. The two face off and more men decide to jump in, so Frank spills oil all over the floor causing the men to lose their footing. Using this to his advantage, he is able to avoid the men and strap bicycle pedals to his feet, giving him grip in the oil. Frank then beats all the men, just before others open fire on him, forcing him to use one man as a shield and escape through a window into the water. The men throw oil into the water and set it on fire, but Frank takes the dead man's oxygen and swims to safety. Now out for blood, he steals an old car and begins chasing after the trucks. However, the car breaks down soon after. Spotting a farming plane landing nearby, Frank races after it. When the plane lands, Frank kindly commandeers the plane. He catches up with the convoy on the highway, and instructs the pilot to call Turconi, before parachuting down and landing on the container. He manages to take over the truck, with Mr. Kwai and Darren in the car behind shooting at him. Darren manages to climb aboard the truck and attack Frank. The two battle, barely managing to keep the truck on the road. After a while, Darren gets the upper hand and kicks Frank through the windshield. Thinking he is dead, they continue on, but Frank has survived and is holding on for dear life under the truck. Mr. Kwai spots him and tries to shoot him, but Frank throws a tool knocking out their driver and forcing them off the road. He then climbs back on top of the container and with amazing agility, grabs Darren by the neck and throws him out of the truck. Frank brings the truck to a stop but the determined Mr. Kwai holds him at gunpoint, forcing him to walk to the edge of a cliff to end his life. They hear a gunshot in the distance and they think Lai is dead and he goes to shoot Frank, but Lai turns up and brings herself to shoot her father dead. Inspector Turconi and his men arrive at the scene and they open containers to reveal the captured people and bring them to safety. Remember to turn on notifications, so you can watch more movie recaps like this. Thanks for watching.